All righty, please be seated. We're starting a new series in the Gospel of John. What we're going to be doing from now until Easter is just grabbing little parts and just reflecting on it. We have small groups that are going on as well. Today we have a lot to cover, okay? So today, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you 4 snapshots, 4 mini-series, 4 scenes of a play, 4 however you want to divide it up. And I'm going to trust the Spirit of God within you to connect those dots, okay? Is that fair? So that means you got to think a little bit. Today's a thinking day. Welcome to those of you who are in the chapel. And Jessica, we hope you get better. She's fighting the flu. The flu has gone to the staff this week, and so we hope that she is doing fine. So I want to begin snapshot number 1 here. In Exodus chapter 24, verse 12, the Lord God Almighty Yahweh said to Moses, "Come up to me on the mountain and stay here," or be here. So remember the history. Moses is taking the Hebrew people out of Egypt through the Red Sea. Now they're in the wilderness, and they find themselves at the base of Mount Sinai. And God calls them up and he gives them the 10 commandments. Then he calls them back up because he wants to give him plans for the tabernacle. Everybody say tabernacle. So think of it, and I'm just thinking this as I go along, so this is a bad analogy, but your tabernacle is your fifth wheel. I mean, it's mobile, right? It moves with you. You go on vacation, you take it with you. Then you buy a home that's steady and solid and built on foundation. That's the temple. So the tabernacle becomes the temple. Does that make sense? Are you all with me? And they're the same. It's just bigger dimensions, and this is mobile. This is a tent that gets to go with them. And he says, I want you to come up here. But when he says it in the Hebrew, it's, I want you to be here, stay here. I want your full attention. Leave your cell phone at the base of the mountain. Get up here. Don't worry about the Super Bowl. Don't worry about what you're cooking. Just be here. Be fully present. Because he says, here's the problem, is I'm going to be talking to you. I'm going to be present in your life throughout your whole entire life. But if you're not fully present, then oftentimes you're not going to hear me. You're going to miss me. And I don't want you to miss me because I'm trying to be fully present with you. And what I want you to do is understand that I'm going to have 1 foot in heaven and 1 foot on earth. And the place I'm going to be on earth is going to be in this tabernacle. Because the tabernacle was set up in a design just like the Jewish tents were. So I have a home just like you have a home. Has anybody ever heard the term Shekinah glory? Have you? One person raised their, no? Well, some of you haven't, all right. Shekinah glory, the word Shekinah in Hebrew means to dwell. Glory, we've talked about that, right? It's the weight, the influence of somebody. So when we talk about the Shekinah glory, it's when you can manifestly see in this world God's glory, his power, his presence. So when they're wandering in the wilderness, you had this pillar of fire at night. That'd be Shekinah glory. You could see the manifestation. And then in the daytime, a cloud. And then when they got to the tabernacle, the Shekinah glory would settle into the tabernacle. Remember, Moses goes in and he comes out and his face is all white and shining. It's a Shekinah glory, the presence of God. He says, I'm going to be present with you, so I want you to be fully present with me. Now, at the end of the Old Testament, before the New Testament, is about 400 years, this intertestamental period. And there's lots of cool things going on during this time. One of which is Alexander the Great. Anybody ever heard of Alexander the Great? Did you know he had a mentor named Aristotle? And Aristotle says to Alexander the Great, listen, you're going to go out and see lots and lots of cool cultures. You're going to go out and see lots and lots of great things. And every culture, you're going to be able to glean something, take something, learn from it, enjoy it, but always remind yourself, there is no culture as great as the Greek culture. So he would go out and he would dominate and take over and conquer a country. And he'd look at about 1,000 of his soldiers and say, I want you to be enveloped. I want you to go marry these women, and I want you to be enveloped in this community, in this country. Embrace their culture, but I want you to rise to a sense of prominence and power, and then I want you to remind them and show them the greatness of the Greek culture. And this was called Hellenization. Have you heard that back in school? yeah. So Greek culture. So Greek culture and Greek language kind of became the main thing throughout the known country and the world at that time. At the same time, Rome is coming back into play. And they're building roads and shipping lanes. And then at the same time, synagogues are coming into play for the Jewish people that were taken by Babylon and other places, and they find themselves far away from Jerusalem. And they're supposed to go to Jerusalem at least 3 times a year for the high holidays, but they can't. It's too far to go, and they can't afford to do it. So they started building synagogues that were going on at that time. Now, if we take a step back after Alexander the Great passed away, he had 3 generals that took over his land. The 2 of them that I want you to be aware of is Ptolemies down here in Egypt and the Seleucids. Now, this gets a little tedious, so stay with me for a second, okay? Ptolemy wanted Alexandria to rival Athens in cultural prowess. In fact, one of the largest libraries ever assembled to this day was in Alexandria. It was a powerful library. And so he had some of the Jewish people come down and write the Old Testament so it would be in the library. But by then, they were all Hellenized. They were speaking and writing Greek. So they wrote the Septuagint. It was a Greek Old Testament. So to this day, when scholars are studying, they have a hard press to go back and find all times the Hebrew because we have more Greek parchments and scrolls than we did the Hebrew ones. Now, what they said to Jerusalem is, we're going to let you be a city-state. So think of the Vatican. The Vatican is in the midst of Rome, which is in the midst of Italy, but they have their own little army of 5 or 6 people. They have their own little coinage. They have their own little money. They have their own little democracy. This is their own little place. Well, the same thing happened. Ptolemy said to Jerusalem, you get to be a city-state. So you can take the first 5 books of the Bible, and you can make that your constitution. The priests, they can be the political leaders. You can have your own money. You can even have your own army. But you will have to pay homage to me, and you'll have to pay taxes to us. Now, this piece of land is very powerful land because it's right in the midst of all the trails and markets that go back and forth through here, the trading routes. And so they would go back and forth fighting for this. And so eventually the Seleucids came and took over. And they had the same deal. Now Rome comes in from over here, and the Seleucids said, we need to focus on this front right here. We're fighting a battle. And when they did that, the Jewish people said, let's revolt. And so they did, but it didn't go well. In fact, the Seleucids were so upset when they came back, they took away not only the city-state, they went in and they knocked down the walls of the temple. And they went into the temple and they stole money and gold and treasures. And then they did what Jesus calls in Mark chapter 13, verse 14, the abomination that causes desolation. They went in and they put up a statue of Zeus, and they would start to sacrifice and slaughter pigs in there. And for 2 or 3 years this is going on. You'd have to come and make sacrifices to Zeus. So there was a priest, Matthias Maccabee. And Matthias Maccabee was there one day, and the great high priest of Zeus came in, and he said, Matthias, make a sacrifice to Zeus. And he said, no, I won't do that. Another Hebrew priest said, I'll do it. So he stepped over to do it. Matthias took out his knife and sliced the guy's throat and killed him and said, you're a traitor to our God. And then he turned to the high priest of Zeus and killed him. And then he ran to the mountains. And when he ran to the mountains, people gathered around him. And he came back, and they had what's called the Maccabean Revolt. You all have heard of that, right? And so they pushed out the Seleucids. Matthias didn't make it, but his son Jacob finished it all off for him. And at the end, they purified the temple. And here's what he said. Jacob cleansed and purified the temple back to Yahweh. Now, this is important because in today's society, we have a Jewish holiday that celebrates this. And it's called what? Hanukkah. This is Hanukkah. So when people say, Happy Hanukkah, what they're saying is, happy cleansing and purifying yourself back to God. Happy rededicating your heart to the movement of God. Happy dedication. Most people don't think that way. Just like when they say Merry Christmas, they're not saying, Merry Christmas, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us and tabernacles here, and my heart's going back with God. We don't usually think that, but that's what's going on at Hanukkah. Now, during that time, there's another group of Jewish people that rise up called the Pharisees, which means to separate. They saw what happened at the temple, and they said, we don't ever want that to happen again. We don't want anyone to come in and take over the temple, number one, but number two, if they do, we want to be able to be ready. It's kind of like when the Roman Catholic priests were being pushed about, can you not just do everything in Latin? Can we understand this better? It's what the Protestant Reformation happened because we want it to the people. So this is somewhat what's going on. And they desired to control the laws that ruled the everyday life of the Hebrew people. They were known for their knowledge of the law and ancestral customs and for their meticulous attention to the practice of the laws. So years later, when Jesus was walking this earth, he went in the temple courts and he found men selling cattle, sheep, and doves, and others sitting at tables exchanging money. So he made a whip out of cords and he drove all from the temple area. When he did this, that started to mark the downfall of Jesus because he angered three people: the spiritual leaders, the political leaders, but economics. Even in today's culture, whether you're right or left, no matter who the president is, if they can't figure out how to make your life easier financially, you tend to want to vote them out of office. His disciples remembered that it was written, zeal for your house will consume me. Then the Jews demanded of him, what miraculous sign can you show us to prove your authority to do all this? And Jesus answered, destroy this what? Temple, and I will raise it again in 3 days. Now they're sitting right there in the big temple, but he's talking about this temple. So here's what I want us to reflect on between now and Easter as we do this series. I want you to reflect on this question: what areas of your life need to be cleansed and rededicated? You may be a spiritual giant. You may have everything going for you, but you're not perfect yet. So ask the Holy Spirit as we go through from now until Easter, Holy Spirit, what are some areas of my life, whether it's my thoughts, my actions, my words, whatever it needs, what areas do I need to rededicate back to you? Snapshot number 2. There are 4 Gospels. Are you ready? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Right? Mark is probably the first written, we believe. Mark was probably John Mark writing the words down of Peter. Matthew has a bent towards the Jewish listeners. Luke has a little bent towards the Gentile listeners. So listen, if I had 3 of you and you saw something happen and I asked each of you for your experience, you're giving a different portrait. You're in the ballpark, but you're giving a little different portrait. And that's what's going on here. So Matthew, Mark, and Luke are called synoptic gospels. They see things together. They kind of are sharing the same stories from little different angles. And they're concerned with what happened. John's kind of the thumb. John's more concerned with the gospel's meaning. And so John writes this in the last chapter: Jesus did many other things as well. If every one of them were written down, I suppose that even the whole world would not have room for the books that would be written. But he said, I'm just giving you a snapshot, portraits. All 4 of these, if you went back into that time, are considered biographical stories, textbook. Because biographies in those days didn't go from cradle to grave. They took somebody, whoever the person was, and looked at their life, the important things they did in life. Now, we believe that Jesus died when he was 30. When you're 30 years of age, you could start being a rabbi. Not until you're 30. So at 30, he started being a rabbi. We think he died 3 years later, so 33 years of age. So you'd think it was 33 AD. However, the calendars have messed around, so we now think that 0 was 4 BC. We don't know. So Jesus died somewhere between AD 28 to be safe to 35 or 6 to be safe. That's right, in that frame. John was probably the last one written, and it was written around 68 to 90 A.D. In 70 A.D., the temple fell for the last time. Up until then, the Christians were going to the temple because the Christians were Jewish people, because Jesus was Jewish. We just believed that Jesus was the fulfillment and he was the Messiah. So we would go to the Jewish temple, and then we would go and have lunch together with other Christians and talk about how Jesus fulfilled what we just talked about. But after the fall of the temple, the Jewish people had a different benediction. Let the Nazarenes and the heretics be destroyed in a moment, and let their names be blotted out of the book of life. And we suddenly said, I don't think we're welcomed anymore. And all of a sudden, persecution kicked in. And tradition has it that all of the disciples were martyred and killed, except for John. John was put on Patmos Island. John, tradition tells us, had hot oil, boiling oil, poured all over him, trying to recant, and he wouldn't. Tradition tells us he lived to be about 80 or 90 years old, and they took him and put him in Ephesus, and at Ephesus he started helping disciple people, and we saw a second generation coming up that didn't know Jesus. He wrote the Gospel of John. And in chapter 20 he says this, but these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing in him, you may have life in his name. So he does two things through the Gospel of John. He's showing us Jesus is truly the Christ, giving us different portraits of him. And he's showing us what happens in our life if we trust him. Now, do you have 2 minutes for me to just chase a little rabbit trail? Is that okay? Okay, thank you. So the way historians work back then, because we didn't have computers, the cloud, and typewriters, so the way they work is this. If there's somebody of prominence who was dying in 10 BC, when they died, they would look for other writings about that person that they could prove were true and accurate, and then that would be considered a consistent documentation with that person's life. So, for example, anybody study Rome in junior high or high school? If you studied anything about Rome, I promise you studied stuff from Tacitus. He was the great historian of Rome. And so they went back, and the closest they could find something of his was 700 years later. And everybody's like, whew, that's pretty good. Way back when? To still find? Because listen, if you go to your grandparents' house, if you go to someone's house after they pass away and you have their old books and it's all yellow pages and falling apart, think of that being 1,000 years, 2,000 years, right? So it's really hard to find good stuff. Josephus, he was the Jewish historian, 300 years. Whoa, that's really impressive. In 1920, in the black market in the Middle East, they found what they call the fragment, Parchment 52. It was John chapter 18, and they found that, and they dated it to 120 A.D. In other words, 50 years after John passed away. And scholars, secular, Christian, doesn't matter, went, whoa. My point is simply this. You can trust this book. You may not like this book. You may not agree with this book. But this book has been vetted more than any other book that you will ever read. Snapshot number 3. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Now, Sophia in Hebrew means wisdom. Logos in Greek means word or wisdom. It's the essence of an idea or philosophy. It's God's will to be known. Jesus is God's thought in flesh. That's why we say this. We say there never was a time when Jesus didn't exist. He wasn't created because he was always with the Father. He was the Father's thought. In John chapter 1, verse 4, in Jesus was life, and in that life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has not understood or overcome it. Do you guys remember Genesis chapter 1? God spoke the word and light. Jesus isn't just a light or isn't a life. He is the light, the life. And he's in the world that's full of darkness. And we don't really understand it completely, but we can't overcome it because he's God. Now, the foundation of all of this is found in John 1:14. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling. He tabernacled. He became uh, the, 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 um, the glory of God among us, and we've seen his glory, the glory of the one and only who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. All right, everybody take a deep breath. So a few years ago, there was an article in Paw Prints and Purrs, and a little boy was asking his dad, where do pets come from? So his dad said, well, you know, I think the Bible story goes something like this. Adam said, Lord, when I was in the garden, you walked with me every day. Now that I've been taken out of the garden, I don't see you anymore, and I'm lonesome here. And it's difficult for me to remember how much you love me. And God said, no problem. I'll create a companion for you that will be with you forever and who will be a reflection of my love for you, so that you will know I love you even when you cannot see me, regardless of how selfish and childish and unlovable you may be. This new companion will accept you as you are and will love you as I do, in spite of yourself. And God created a new animal to be companion for Adam. And it was a good animal. And God was pleased. And the new animal was pleased to be with Adam. And he wagged his tail. And Adam said, but Lord, I have already named all the animals in the kingdom, and all the good names are taken, and I cannot think of a name for this new animal. And God said, no problem, because I have created this new animal to be a reflection of my love for you. His name will be a reflection of my own name, and you will call him Dog. And Dog lived with Adam, and was a companion to him, and loved him. And Adam was comforted. And God was pleased, and Dog was content and wagged his tail. After a while it came to pass that Adam's guardian angel came to the Lord and said, Lord, Adam has become filled with pride. He struts and preens like a peacock, and he believes he's worthy of adoration. Dog has indeed taught him that he is loved, but no one has taught him humility. And the Lord said, no problem. I will create for him a companion who will be with him forever and who will see him as he is. The companion will remind him of his limitations, so he will know that he is not worthy of adoration. And God created Cat. How many of you thought we were going to say wife? And when Adam gazed into Cat's eyes, he was reminded that he was not the supreme being, and Adam learned humility. And God was pleased. And Adam was greatly improved. And Cat did not care one way or the other. My older brother had a St. Bernard called Mose. So he had this St. Bernard, and then he and his wife had a child, Chris. Chris is now in his late 40s. When Chris was a toddler, he and Moses were best of buds. He would walk over and pull on Moses' ear and yank on his tail and crawl up on him trying to ride him, and Moses would just sit there and take it all in. One afternoon, my sister-in-law Carol was working in the garden in the back, and Mose and Chris were just sitting in the grass playing. And all of a sudden, she heard Chris crying. And she looked over, and Mose was standing in front of him and had knocked him down. And as he tried to get back up, Mose pushed him down forcefully again. Now, the problem with St. Bernards is sometimes interbreeding, they can trigger in their head, and that's what she thought was going on. So she got up and screamed Mose, and she ran over and she swooped up Chris. But when she swooped him up, she looked over and she saw 10 feet away a very large snake. Mose was protecting Chris, standing between him and the snake. Experts tell us that wolves don't bark, very little. Maybe 2% of their communication in the wilderness is barking. They growl, they howl, they yip and they yelp. They don't do a lot of barking. Domesticated dogs, if you've had one, you know they bark. And experts tell us that's because they're trying to communicate with humanity. And so they bark to let us know they need to go outside. They bark to let us know they're hungry. They bark to let us know they're happy. And they bark differently to let us know there's danger. But no matter how much they bark, we don't really understand because we're not really that good at communication, are we, as human beings? Even when we have the same English language, we have a difficult time to communicate with one another. Just look at the political world today. And even if you love somebody, you have difficulty in marriages or families just trying to figure how to communicate. And they say the main reason is because we're not fully present. We don't really come to a communication fully present, trying to listen and learn and understand, because we're selfish people. And we're too busy thinking about ourselves. So I can tell you that the Word became flesh. I can tell you that the Trinity is one ousia, three hypostasis, one essence, three personhoods. I can tell you that Jesus is fully God and fully man, but I'm not sure we'll ever hear that. Because God has been screaming to humanity from the very beginning, I love you, I care for you, I want a relationship with you, I want you to know my morals, I want to teach you values, I want to teach you the ways that will give you life. And we just had a hard time hearing it. So finally, he says, I will send my word, and it'll be flesh, and it'll talk to you in a language that you understand. Snapshot number 4. He's called the tabernacle because the tabernacle was what everyday life was like for the Hebrew people. They cooked outside. They didn't cook inside. It'd get too hot. And so you have your altar outside. And then you would wash your feet and hands and face before you went inside. And so there's a basin. And the sacrificing the altar was to remind us that when we sin, there's consequences. It's serious business, not just to ourselves, but there's a ripple effect to the community. And then when you go inside a house, you would have lights. The beautiful thing of this is the light's always on in the temple. And then you would sit down and you'd have your meal, so there'd be bread. And then there was incense that was going up, the prayers of the people. That represents the conversations that we would have. And you'd go to the Holy of Holies, which was the bedroom. And there was the Ark of the Covenant. And there's 3 things in the Ark of the Covenant. There was the 10 Commandments, obey me. There was manna, trust me. And then Aaron, who was their worship leader, the first high priest, had a staff. His staff was there that means worship me. So worship me, trust me, obey me. And so God, trying to talk to humanity, says, the only thing I know to do is to send my son down and let him tabernacle, dwell, be, and speak with you and be fully present with you and hope that you'll be fully present back and hear him. Because listen, he's going to be up all night taking your prayers and requests. He's going to eat with you and try to understand you at a very relational level. He's going to have conversations and take your prayers to me. He's going to sacrifice himself for you. He's going to wash himself clean. The only thing he's asking is worship him, trust him, obey him. But the word came into the darkness. I know it did. Yet to all who will receive him, to those who believe in his name, he gave the right to become children of God.